Okay, we're live. Hi everyone. Welcome to this new episode of Rack Europe Hangouts. Today we're happy to welcome Sanket from BuilderX fame and Geeky Hands, and he'll be talking about building communities for open source projects. So, hello Sanket, how are you doing?
Hey Patrick, I'm doing good. How are you?
Fine, fine. I will let you present yourself and then go with your presentation and let you share your screen, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, sure. That sounds great. Thank you so much first for having me on this Hangout show. And I really like the initiative by React Europe, giving a chance to give a little sneak peek of like what we are working on and how to go about it in the conference way before that. So that's really cool. Let me share my screen and let's see. Okay. Yep. Again, can you see my screen? Okay, cool. All right. Oops. All right. Thank you so much, Patrick. So my topic today is building online communities for open source projects. Actually, not that I changed it a bit. So the topic is building communities for open source projects because I'm going to touch a little bit about offline communities as well. And yeah, so as Patrick introduced me, I'm Sanket. I'm a software engineer and co-founder at Geeky Ants. I go by the handle Sanket Sahu, and that's how I look on the internet. You can go ahead and check me out. And yeah, a little bit about Geeky Ants. We are a product studio. What that means is we build products internal and external. We have clients who we help them with building their mobile apps, web apps. And on the side, we also work on internal projects like Native Base, Vue Native, BuilderX, all those things. Uh, Popular open source projects by Geekians is Native Base, which is open source. And then we have Vue Native as our second major open source contribution. And I'm going to talk about BuilderX in React Europe this year. I'm going to talk about how we built it and how you can build it too, right from the internal architecture to the state management and everything, what it takes to build a tool like BuilderX. It's a design tool which gives you code output of React and React Native. But today I'm not going to talk much about BuilderX. Going to talk about communities and how to build communities. I also co-host meetup groups, React Native Bangalore, Flutter Bangalore, Svelte Bangalore. React Native Bangalore is one of the biggest React Native meetup groups in the world. We have about 5,000 members over there, and we do it every couple of months with a lot of interactive sessions. And let me talk a little bit about native base in particular, what exactly it is. So native base is a UI component library for React Native, definitely support for Android and iOS. It was announced about 3.5 years ago when React Native came for Android. We started building this little open source library. Mm, and as of today, it has 13,500 GitHub stars. And the monthly download is about 150,000 installs per month. And native base is a dependency for 37,000 plus repositories. 37,000 repositories actually depend on native base. And we have over 100 contributors who have made this happen. So how did we get there? How did we get native base to that scale so that it gets so many downloads and so many people are involved and so many projects are dependent on this? The answer is very simple. Definitely community. So the question is, when actually do you start building the community? Most of the developers think that it starts once you're done building your project. It's not after the launch. It actually starts way before that. It starts when you first encounter a problem which you think about solving. So let's have a look at the life cycle of a project. So we start with the problem. Say you are trying to build something, and on the way you start facing some problem, and then you think about it. So it can start as early as, say, asking the talking about the problem in the community, be it on Twitter, be it say at your work with colleague, and anywhere. So the first step is definitely the problem, and then comes the idea phase. Like, you get in touch with great mentors in the community. You get involved with the people who are actually working in the same space, and that's how you start building your community. You take your proposed solution and ask for suggestions in the community. You can even put it as an RFC on GitHub, which the React team has been doing lately really well. And with just enough validation, you can actually get started with the next step, that is building the product. Even when building the solution, you can actually invite and collaborate with the people in the community. There are a bunch of great groups who are ready to help when you are actually building a solution. Things like 100 days of code. You can even live stream when you are building it, and that also helps in building the community. Say, for example, Kidze keeps live streaming his projects like CZ and all those things, and people also learn from that, and it also creates a bit of brand awareness. So community building can be a part of any of these steps. Then after you build it, you actually launch it. Launch again can have like two parts. One is pre-launch part, and then post-launch. So pre-launch could be like you create the buzz in the community, getting the attention to get everyone talking about it. And once you launch it, you have to go on different platforms. So the launch is very important for building the community, or uh, for the awareness of what you have built. We usually go through, say, product hunt for the product launch. You make sure that your tweet is compiled well. You post it on Reddit, Hacker News. You write articles and post it on relevant platforms like Dev2, Medium, and things like that. And then comes the maintenance phase, which is equally important to keep the community live. The success of open source project lies in great documentation, how well it is maintained, and how you are actually attending the issues, merging PRs, keeping the dependencies up to date, evolve with the ecosystem. What if the platform itself changes? Say React comes up with React hooks, and your entire library is based on, say, React classes. So in that case, you need to upgrade and evolve with the community altogether. And where actually you build your communities, uh, online and offline. Let's see online communities one by one. So we have GitHub, definitely. Let me just quickly show how we actually built. So say native base, for example. This is the README file of native base repo. The first thing is that you have to keep the README uh, up to date, and it has to be very informative. It has to have uh, basic things like how to get started with it, how to set it up, how to contribute back. So these things are very important when you are actually putting your open source project out there, because this is the entry point for anyone to come and, say, contribute or get involved with your project. And then comes the Twitter. So the announcement when you are making that, okay, there's this solution available for this particular problem. Make sure your tweet is compiled well and you reach out to relevant people. For example, this is the launch tweet of BuilderX, where I spoke about the problem, what it solves, and then a little sneak peek of how it looks like. And I also posted a bunch of links, relevant ones, like where is it hosted on Product Hunt, then Reddit, and those things. So Twitter is quite important to build the community. Then comes Hacker News. So once it's live there, you should also put it on Hacker News and get comments from relevant people and see how the community reacts to your solution. And Reddit and Hacker News are similar. Then Product Hunt page. Product Hunt is very important. Let me just quickly jump through and show you how we built the Product Hunt page of, say, BuilderX. Okay. Oops. So once you put it out there, make sure that the product hunt page has all the details right from the description, and it's good to be hunted by one of the top hunters, which is really good. And as soon as you put it out there, people start asking questions. You can put a message like this: ask me anything, and then put the idea behind it and write about it, and then make sure you respond to all the questions and comments what people put it out there on Product Hunt. And then we have blog platforms. Dev2 is pretty important these days, and so is Medium. But Dev2 has taken an advantage over Medium these days, because most of the people who used to post things on Medium have moved to the developer blogging platform called Dev2. And the network of Dev2 is really good, especially for React and open source project. It's working out really well. Make sure you tag your articles and add as many details as possible. Keep it concise, and this really helps in getting the attention of the developer community. And then we have other instant messaging platforms. Make sure you discover the relevant instant messaging groups. Like Discord is pretty famous for Svelte. We have Slack as well for a few of the things. Like we have built our own Slack team for native base, which is working really well. We have over 2,000 members there, and people interact there. That is really good. And if you have the like a good reputation on a Stack Overflow, that also works really well. You can go ahead and create a tag. That's what we did for native base. And now whenever someone asks a question for native base, they tag native base on Stack Overflow, and we get notified. So that is also really important. And then we also have Spectrum. If you put create a Spectrum group, people can also ask questions. This entire thing can be a little overwhelming, but you have to choose and find out the correct network. Not all these platforms work for all the communities. It really depends on what type of project you have built, and what is the relevant community. Like for Svelte, Discord works really well. On the other hand, for something else, something might work, something might not. So you need to find that out yourself. And offline communities are equally important. That includes local meetups and tech conferences. For example, as I mentioned in previously, that we have about 5,000 members in the React Native Bangalore meetup group. That works really well for us. Get involved with the people and understand what they are working on, understand their problem, and then get early feedback on whatever we want to build. And something similar goes for tech conferences, but tech conferences and meetups are a bit different in terms of like meetups are more interactive. You can reach out to people easily. In conferences, it's more of like great talks, and it's more international. So it again depends like what type of solution you're building. And yeah, I want to say that uh, no good project or no developer uh, can actually go ahead alone in this thing. Like the proverb says, no man is an island, and that goes for no developer is an island, or no project is an island. And stay kind and humble, learn from each other, build great things. And yeah, that's all from my side. I would like to open this up for questions.
Thanks, Sanket. That was great. Um, So feel free to ask any question in the comment section. Um,
Okay, let me just check.
so I have a quick question. Do you think are there any mistakes you think you did on your first project that you think you could improve on your next open source project about building
Yes.
communities?
Yes, native base, if you take for an example, native base 1.0 was released in a premature state, which was not that great. We didn't have the quality over there, and that's what we improved with v 2.0. So something which is broken and doesn't work in some environments, people should avoid that. Something which is mature enough, has been tested on different projects. Uh, that is something what I've learned from the first version of native base, I would say.
Okay. And
Okay.
what do you think was the most effective online channel to promote to build the community, or was it a combination of many channels, or do you think it's hard to know exactly which one was the best?
Uh, that again depends. Like if you have like a lot of followers on Twitter, then Twitter works really well because once you tweet, it goes viral from there. But if you don't have many followers on Twitter, then probably a combination of say writing articles and also like initially with native base we also reached out to paid platforms for a couple of articles, so that worked as the initial boost. So it really depends. Influencers, if you have solved a problem which is very common, then you can probably ask and or reach out to specific people in the community who can help you promote that. That also works well. So social platforms, Twitter works number one, I would say, and then obviously writing good content and making sure you have enough relevant articles up there.
Okay. And
Yeah.
how do you decide um, on how much resource you dedicate to your open source project as a company? There are many companies who are a bit scared of wasting resources in such projects. Could you give any
That's a very
advice?
good. Yeah, that's a very good question, Patrick. So when we started, we always wanted to like contribute and do a lot of fun side projects because personally that keeps me going with all the. I mean, I don't like falling in patterns, so we always have to do it. Had to do it because that was the fun side of the project. So we started with 70-30 ratio. If I'm full time in some project, then initially when the team size was like 6-7 people, we used to like split our own time into 70 and 30 ratio. That 70% I'll be working on a client project, solving some problems using apps, and then 30% would go into R&D and open source. And as we scaled, we have divided this among developers. Like even today, we are 200 plus people company, and we have about 30 to 40 people out of 200 into R&D, research, and all those things.
I think it makes sense also if you get to use your own open source project. Like, do you use native base a lot for your Granites project, for example?
Yes. Another theory what we have is that solve your own problem. So we solve our own problem. We don't like look for another set of problems, something which we are facing on a daily basis in client project. If we can build a solution, then we are the first customers, and then we like put it out there for others to use. So definitely we use it a lot in our client projects.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
Um,
and that is what we're
yeah,
trying to do with BuilderX as well. I mean, BuilderX is slowly maturing. We have used it partially in some projects, some client projects, but we want to make it a tool which becomes the go-to place for any UI related or for any project to start off with, so that you can just convert your designs to code and then like just wire up the API calls.
and speaking of builders, there are many people who are really impressed by the fact that you can import from Sketch. Um, I guess maybe we'll talk about it at the conference. How mature would you rank importing from Sketch?
How mature?
Yeah, the
Uh, it's a tough call, that is what we are. To be honest, that is what we are struggling with right now. Uh, Sketch and not just Sketch. It's a different problem. Designers don't usually think in terms of say Flexbox,
Hmm.
and they don't think in terms of the bundle size. So something that is very basic, or something which requires say a couple of lines of code, can be developed by a designer using a combination of say 20 different items in Sketch, and that gives you a lot of code, which developers don't really like. So that's a hard problem to solve. So we're not pushing too hard on using the Sketch import
Hmm.
feature. If you develop everything right inside BuilderX, then it gives you much cleaner code. So
Yeah.
the rating out of 10 would be 6 or 7, and it can't really go beyond that, not because of the tool, but because of the way designers are used to design things.
Yeah, it's a hard problem. And are there any difference between? Well, I'm sure there are, but could you tell the difference about marketing an open source project versus a commercial one?
Yes, there's a lot of difference. First, when you ask people to pay for a product, then the customer relationship changes.
Hmm.
But open source, it's not like that. If people are facing problems, you definitely make a note, but you can also go ahead and tell them, okay, the file is here. This is the function call. Maybe if you can fix that for me, that would be great. So uh, open source, it's I mean the customer side or the user side, it's a different thing. People are ready to help. They can send PRs and add comments on the code structure and a lot of things. But on the closed or something like BuilderX, people don't really know what's going behind the scenes, so it's sometimes becomes tough to explain things out there. And yeah, and marketing open source, it's not that difficult, because if it's out there and people can just use it as a dependency, see what's in there, and then fork it and do all those things. So it's pretty easy compared to something like BuilderX.
Okay. Um, One last
Did,
question,
did
I
that
guess.
answer?
Tell me.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's of course as soon as people start paying for a product, they start the relation is different. Although maybe people complain a lot on GitHub even if they don't pay anything. So I guess
That's true. That's true. I mean, that's the problem with our community itself. Uh, Only a fraction of people are ready to like jump into the open source project, install it on their system, and try to help. I think that fraction is less than 1%, I guess,
Mhm.
because out of 100 people who use your project, less than 1% would be there to actually install it and try to send PRs, right? So that changes. That's very true. And also the scale. I mean, open source, if you have built something like really useful, which is solving a very trivial problem, uh, then the dependency, like Nativebase has 37,000 projects are dependent on that. So the scale is really massive for open source project if it gets that popularity. For closed source, the scale is different. So you have more responsibility if the project is even a bit famous in the open source world.
Okay. Do you have time for one last question?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess something a lot of company are wondering is, does it help to have a open source project for hiring?
Uh, Open source project for hiring.
Does it attract
Like what?
people? Does it attract developers? The fact that you have great open source project built in house.
In fact, it helps us for getting good developers, and also getting some attention and eyes of clients, because as soon as you say that you are behind an open source project which is about 13,000 stars on GitHub, and it's a dependency for a lot of projects in that ecosystem, then even the clients and leads, they start building that trust, right? You start building the trust with the clients. And even the developers, they're very excited about this, because open source means community and meetup groups and all those things. So the inflow of people who come to you and the quality of developers, definitely it attracts a lot of them.
Okay, I know that for example GitLab they hire a lot of contributors to GitLab, open source contributors, but that I guess that's because they have so many contributors. Have you
Yeah.
ever hired a contributor to one of your open source projects, for example?
Um, yes and no. I mean, remotely people have helped us, and we have paid them. Full time, sorry, full time, no. But people have come to us seeing our projects, and I think there are about 5 or 6 people who have come through that channel, who are full time working with EKNs right now.
Okay, nice. Well, thanks, Sanket. And you have anything else you would like to tell us, or?
No, I'm very excited for React Europe. I just hope that everything goes smooth, and I see you guys in May at the conference.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I hope I see you too, and thanks for the great talk.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Patrick. Nice
Okay,
talking to you. See
welcome.
you.
Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers. Bye.